So what do pizzas, hospitals, and islands have to do with thinking frameworks, and how does mastering these three problems of frameworks will help you understand a variety of things in this world? Today's video is about that. This is Ramala Hubb'Allah. Today is October 1st, 2025. I'm back with you after a long time. And this is my introduction. And in a minute, we'll take you to a blank slate and tell you what these problems are and how will they help you think better. Stay with me throughout this video. Start liking, subscribing now, and we'll jump into this topic right away. We're back. For those who are new or want to refresh their memories, this is who I am. You can freeze the frame and take a look at this now or later. And these are my YouTube channels, and you'll be seeing me on one or more of these top two channels, and the others are some of my other work. And so I'm going to jump into my favorite example that I give to people when I want them to understand something. You would not have seen most of my work or the best of my work because I have been an oral teacher since the 1990s, but here we are. And I decided to put these frameworks in a consolidated form and refer to them again and again because I keep coming back to these things. I am, as I say, an integral teacher and thinker, and my projects are about systems thinking, integral thinking, bringing everything together and making sense of it all at once. Something that we absolutely need in 2025 in this era, in this time when the whole world has come together. So the pizza framework, my first framework, is a framework of integral systems when you want to think integrally. What is it? Very simple. Here's a pizza, imaginary pizza. My drawing isn't so great, and you have on it some mushrooms, and you have on it cheese. Okay, let's make a triangle. That's the cheese. And you have on it onions, and you have on it capsicum, and you have on it salami. And for some people, you also get some pineapple in this. And this is what your pizza is. This is what I call an integral framework or an example of one. What is integral? Integral means bringing things together. Okay, bringing things together and making them a whole, bringing things together. Um, and the word integer means one. So the pizza example or the pizza framework shows you that when we want to put together a system, it is made up of various components, each of which loses its shape and form or compromises this a little bit or alters it a little bit to become part of a system. You do not put a whole mushroom as it is into a pizza, and you do not put a whole capsicum or chili into the pizza, and you do not put a whole onion into the pizza as it is, and you do not put a cow and its milk in the pizza as it is. You get a derivative product that's called cheese, and then you don't put raw wheat in pizza. You make flour, and then you knead it, and then you process it before it comes into pizza. And yet these are the components. Does this look like a mushroom? No, yeah. So these are components that it's made of. But the components get processed and lose their shape when they come into the pizza. And so when we bring a system together, it brings together various elements and components, which in their original and raw form look different than what they would look like in a pizza. The point of that is when things come together in a system, they would take parts of the mother components and then put them together in that system. The pizza is an integral framework or a system. One system, right? One kind of system that makes you lose your shape and your taste as it would be in isolation, and then transforms it to make it something of value, one system of value. You lose your shape a little, you lose your absolute original taste a little in the process of being cooked or in the process of being kneaded and the wheat turning into flour and milk curdling into cheese and being fermented. It's not milk anymore. But this is how you become part of a system. So when we are looking at a system that works, we are looking at components that were something else before that. And they all need to move together. They need to lose their shape a little bit, or they need to get processed somehow in order to become that system. So when people work together, when nations work together, they are themselves. A mushroom is a mushroom. An apple is a pineapple. Cheese is a form of milk. Onion is an onion. and the flour that you're getting in it is wheat, but it doesn't look like what it looked like initially at its source. And these things themselves went through a life cycle where they looked like something else when they were in baby stages, when they were in their egg form, or when they were in their fetal form. And so you change shape in order to become something. When in this world, how is this relevant to 2025? When countries work together, they will need to bring something of the essence of their culture, something of the essence of their traditions in order to work together. Back home, they can be their whole self. But when they work together, they will need to bring an element of them, but which works for the whole, for that particular system to make this thing work. So this pizza example is just a neutral example of an integral framework, and then you can use it in many ways of how you need to get processed, how you need to alter a bit, how you need to give a part of you to a system. This works in many ways. If you are a person called Jacob, and there's another person called Sheila, and there's another person called Ahmed, John, for example, or Ahmed, then they bring a bit of themselves to an organization where they work, but that's not their whole. So you can make this example look forward when you give a part of yourself to some project or something, and you can make it look in the reverse direction, where you realize that the part that you're looking at does not look like a whole or the origin that it came from. So when you're looking at a person, for example, in an organization, that you need to remember, or you're meeting somebody in some place, right? You're working together in a co-working space, you are working together on a disaster relief project, or you're meeting in any context. Do you remember that this person that you're seeing, that little slice that you're seeing, that little itsy bitsy that you're seeing, actually comes from something larger? So they are something larger back home. There's something larger back in the origin. They have a bigger personality in the backdrop. So you can use this example in many ways. So again, it can go backward, it can go forward, this example, and this is an example of how things work together to make something work. And that is an example that I keep on giving, the pizza example, the working together example, the coming together example, the giving a part of yourself example, and how you, when you need to become of use to something, you need to alter yourself to that purpose. And pizza is also a kind of context. You could be another context. You could be fried onions. You could be processed meat or something. You could just be a decorated mushroom and become compost. Wheat could be uh, fodder for animals. So it depends upon the context that you're in, and you have to shift your shape in order to become that context. I like the pizza example. It brings together various elements and makes them work together in order to yield something that is a favorite to a lot of people in the world. So that is the pizza framework. Next, we do hospitals. The hospital framework. I have already tried to make a diagrammatic representation of it. As you can see, I'm not the most fabulous at drawing. That's my kid, Artist Sophia. Go and subscribe. The hospital framework, or the hospital problem, is a problem of paradox. Whereas the pizza framework was about things coming together and yielding taste and some kind of fruit, the hospital framework, or the hospital thinking framework, problem, situation, teaches you how to think in terms of, or how to think of paradox itself. In the hospital problem that I present to people in order to help them think, I teach them that the hospital is a place where people are being born in the same place as where people are being healed and treated and given emergency help and relief and being diagnosed and so on. And where people are on the other extreme end, they are leaving this world. So you are on a completely, on, you know, you are at the start of the human life cycle. You're somewhere in the mid where you need help and healing in alternative kind of hospitals and healing places. You could be having healing modalities and so on. And but in typical hospitals of today, which are about Western medicine, you see the start of life and you also see the end of life. So, how do you deal with a situation that is like a hospital situation, where on the one hand you are experiencing as an adult, right? For children, these events are often spaced apart in their lives, but for adults whose social circle has increased, they will be facing and they'll be coming face to face with things like when one of their brothers' wife is giving birth to a kid, and another brother trigger warning, just loses their kid, or an elder in the family passes around at the same time, the same year, or so on, or within a year you start. You have a calendar of birthdays and anniversaries that you have to deal with as an adult, unlike as a child where you don't have to really take charge of the situations, except for those kids who have to, of course. So the hospital framework is a framework for thinking of paradox. It is also a framework to think about the start and the end of a situation. It's a framework of thinking about contrasts and how do you handle them together. It is a place where all the seasons of life are taking place at the same time. It's a very intense situation. So I use this framework to help myself and to help those who would come to me for guidance and wisdom to think about the fact that there are different things going on in life at the same time. So many of us are facing a situation today where when we are scrolling, it disturbs us that on the one hand we are seeing wars, then we're seeing really extreme unaliving and passing away. Then we're seeing good food. Then we're seeing artisanship. Then we're seeing people celebrating weddings and then birthdays. There was a time, at least in my life, when I thought the whole thing went on one big arc and there was like a start to life and that events just went along a certain arc and ended up in some big way in a, you know, um, just a very specific way. For example, if I was a kid, I was just going to see happy birthdays and birthdays, or when I started becoming an adult, I would see my friends' weddings, and then at the end, we'll start seeing all people die all at once. But that is not what happens. What you start seeing is that you would be seeing the various ups and downs and fluctuations of life all at once, and then they'll start happening until they start happening in a circle, and then you basically reach the end of your witnessing journey on this earth, which is what your life is. Life is witnessing journey. And so the better you witness and the more you engage and participate, the better it is. You get an in-depth experience of this so-called video game that is life that has been initiated by some kind of source. The hospital framework, the hospital thinking framework is very important, and you need to train your brain on it. The way I work with these frameworks is that I think about them. I literally contemplate when I would put together an imaginary pizza. I don't really make or bake pizzas, but I at least eat them or enjoy them. I notice how all these parts come from various sources. If I want to do ecological thinking and literally think about food chain, for example, food is a big issue that I have worked on, food sovereignty and literally growing food. So if I'm looking at the end product, I would work back. I'm going back to the pizza framework right now. I would work back to where it came from. And it also helps me in things like little I don't just use it as a cognitive framework, conceptual framework, but also as a real framework where you think about things like supply chains, you know. So there are lots and lots of applications of each one of these frameworks. In the first place, I want you to use these frameworks as thinking frameworks, as frameworks that will increase your wisdom, your understanding of the world, and your empathy of the world, and will help you understand situations. And then you can start using them for your work. You can work back your supply chains, not just for pizzas, but anything. You can take anything. You can take child's nursery and figure out where the components come from. Um, you could be looking at like this whiteboard that I have for teaching. So I've got a camera and I've got a stand with which to attach this and markers, etc. I had to put together components. So that's what the pizza framework is for. And the hospital framework is kind of a very different, almost the opposite in its intensity and the demand that it puts on your psyche. It makes you think of contrasts and paradoxes that can be very excruciating at times. And when you deal with all these emotional gears and maps and thoughts inside you, you mature as a human, and then you develop the resilience, the immunity, and the practice for it, right? So resilience and immunity are things that seem defensive and reactive, but practice is something that is more proactive. Um, Resilience versus practice. So you just develop a practice. You develop a practice of living and dipping yourself into this pool and that pool and this side and that side. So there are a lot of people who, when they're looking at one side, they shut them down so to the other side. And that's fair enough when you're a youth and you're predominantly dealing with one side of the life spectrum or equation. And I'm not just talking about deaths or life, I'm just talking about paradoxes of various sorts. So the hospital framework is a framework of paradox, not just essentially about um, uh, literal or figurative life or death. It's it's about paradox of all sorts. You're happy, but you're sad in the same moment. And just like a hospital where you could be dealing with one situation, um, you could be in a community where you are a family who's experiencing something happy. So this is about happiness, and this is about or start or and you could be another family that's dealing with sadness or closure. Um, and sometimes closure is not just sad thing. You could be a business that it closes down at 5 p.m. So that's the end point, but the starting point at 5 p.m. There are other businesses that start. So in a city, for example, in a day, there are things that are starting and closing at the same time. And then it develops a rhythm to life. So this is about developing rhythm. It's about a paradox. It's about what is starting now, what is ending now. When evening time comes, you have to close down your day's activities and you have to bring an evening restive modality into action. And so as you're going towards the weekend, the mood shifts and changes. So within a week, you experience the start of the week on Monday, and then you experience the close of it. And for some people, the close of the week could actually be a happy thing. So when we see the end of something or the death of something, that is actually a happy thing. Oh, it's the end of 9 to 5 for me on a Friday night, so that's a happy thing. So what people associate with the end or start is not necessarily happiness versus sadness. It could be we develop another layer of contrasts and paradoxes when the start of something could actually be low key or high key sad, or the end of something would actually be a happy thing, as in with your work weekend or something. There's so many examples to think of. So the hospital example is an example of paradox, as I said. And you could be just one of the parties who's experiencing one end of the extreme, and there are many times when you are the hospital, when you are the person who's experiencing multiple things at the same time. As a business owner, too, you experience this paradox when you have things like um, you get an order for 100 units of your product, but you also have to spend money to get that. So that's the hospital framework, and that's the hospital paradox. And you really have to figure that out because you will be experiencing things like joy and nervousness at the same time. You will have to invest in your own business. So you lose a little bit of money. Sorry, the death part. You lose a little bit of money to gain a bit of business, right? And then you have to manage these rhythms and cycles and bring them into appropriate place. In order to make sure that you grow and thrive at the end, which should be your goal. And in certain situations, you have to de escalate that thing and put that down, just like you switch off your car at the end of a driving period. So, and that essentially has nothing to do with happiness and sadness per se. Momentarily, we can associate these feelings with it, but the birth of something doesn't necessarily have to be a happy thing, and the end of something doesn't necessarily have to be a sad thing. Once again, if you're going on a long shift, the start of the shift could be a little taxing, and the end of it could be a little relaxing, and then you could be doing a lot of tasks that are demanding, disaster relief, and tasks that are kind of unpleasant or really taxing, but you have to do them. So the hospital framework is about paradox. It's about in and out. It's about polar opposites. It's about how there's happiness and joy on the other end, start and beginning. So the other end, ups and downs, switching on and switching off. So it's not just about birth and death, but it's about on and off, these polarities, start and end, anything, driving, working, uh, billing cycles, birthday parties. I'm just giving these really local, homely examples, but you can think of anything. Um, your career, the entire arc of your career, your daily cycle, your raising your farm animals, when you start milking them, when you start, um, making other tomato plants out of your main plant, when you start grafting your trees or something. So you need to do these things. You do this paradox framework on one thing. You could, for example, have a fruit tree, um, and you could be trimming some of it. I'm not very good with these terms, these gardening and other terms, farming terms. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you could be trimming some dead leaves and at the same time uh, allow it to grow fruit. And it will grow fruit only when you trim the dead ends and so on. So you could have the paradox going on in one entity and system. And many times this paradox is within you, when your different moods, when your different cycles and situations are taking place, and you master them. You go through them by facing them, by solving that issue, by processing that, and then you go on to the next step. You just grow, and then you develop a practice of certain things which you'll have to do again and again, but you become a master of them if you handle them the first time. It doesn't matter how you handle them, but you go through it, and going through it is ideally going to improve your practice. You also have to seek in knowledge about particular issues and particular situationships that you're going through. And the more you are present to the moment, to the demand, to that thing, and you could be attending to two different things at the same time. Absolutely. Just like in that business example that I gave to you, you have to pay in order to make your product become available to your buyers. So you have to pay to your suppliers, right? So that's like a transaction that has a duality in it. And that is something that we need to master. So many of us get stuck in one frame and we get frozen. Oh my God, I'm just spending, or my God, I'm just buying only, or I'm just only selling, I don't have my stock ready. But that you need to master these sides of your brain and mind. So this is about developing polarity. It's about developing the two sides of your brain, which I also have to talk about. This is your brain, um, and you need to teach it paradox in order to become a master of life and of situations. And this is what life asks of you, whether you want it or not. So that's the hospital framework and paradox. I'll take you to the last one, that is the island framework. Oh no, and now the third framework, the island framework. And when I made this uh, masterpiece of an image to explain this problem, I realized with an inner chuckle, this can make some people go, whoa, that's triggering, or that's something that I need to contend with. So the island framework, the thinking framework, is a thinking framework, of course, that I use, a kind of simulation, a kind of heuristic, a pattern that I use in order to understand the problem of isolation, expansion, inclusion, and inheritance. And before isolation, I would say initiation, right? When something starts and then it expands, which would also bring us to the problem of, in this day and age, especially the problem of capacity for sure. So, yes, this will answer your left wing and right wing questions that you will be developing in your mind right now. Remember, these left wing and right wing are actually, and I need to do a separate video on that, actually two parts of your brain fighting with each other, or contesting for space for your attention, right? So these things are always working together. They're not even fighting, they're just gears that you're always switching one from the other, or like day turns into night into day, right? So that's the paradox issue. Um, when you're dealing with paradox, you're dealing with something that is going to tease you into two different directions, and then you have to come to a integral place in order to make something work while working between these contrasts and these polarities and these differences. So here's the island framework. This is a framework where we theoretically send a person, or a person finds themselves on an island. They reach there, they're born there, in the game or the movie of their life, and an initiation starts, and then this person is the first and only person on this little island. They're isolated for a while, and then the social circle for this person expands as they find other kinfolk on the island, which can be non-human kinfolks. They can be non-humans, and then other humans come, non-human kinfolks. And then you have to deal with things like inclusion, and then when this person ages, with inheritance, with giving away, and then obviously capacity at the end. So in the island problem, one person, let's call them for ease Jon, John, finds themselves or reaches an island. The island, sorry, is very small. You can see everything. It's within your sight, and whatever is on that island, which is a very remote island, you're not gonna go back to mainland ever again, theoretically. Whatever is on that island is all theoretically yours to engage with and to take and to work with, or however you want to engage with it. It's your place to explore. It's your place to walk about on, your place to bum around on, or do whatever you please. You also can let go of some social etiquettes that human beings have amongst themselves. You can lie around as long as you want to, and as long as it works for you. If you can feed yourself, if you can keep yourself alive, good for you. You do not have to dress in certain appropriate ways unless you are a person of faith who's thinking God is watching them. That's a different problem. But you do not have to socialize at the end of the day in the ways that you would when other people somehow arrive on the island. So, mathematically speaking, and without any thing to do with morality or the ethics of it. When John is the only and the first person, the only person somehow on this island, the entire island is theirs. All right, so irrespective of any kind of morality, but let's assume John is a very conscientious, ecological person, very responsible. The island is entirely their own, occupied by them, belongs to them, for them to do as they please. Then comes one more person. Now, speaking purely mathematically, without any thing to do with ethics or morality as such, mathematically, I say this island is now half half between John and, let's say, Faris, right? John and Faris are now dividing the island and its resources and any human duties that they need to do amongst them. If they are cooperative human beings, they will start dividing tasks among them. Start tasks like um, fishing, harvesting coconuts, making nets, making shelter, or whatever it is that they want to do. So if they are, and they can handle this problem two ways: as conflicting humans, which is pretty bad, and as cooperating humans, which is pretty good. Two modes, right? They can deal with this thing in two ways. But mathematically speaking, in terms of mathematical ethics, the island is now half half in terms of responsibility and authority. And that is something that people need to remember. When we are speaking of what to do with land, we have to speak of responsibility as well as authority. It's not just one or the other. Then you will also come to the issue of ownership. Who is the owner? Ownership versus caretaking. And this belongs to another video. But in short, I'll say here, we can have the attitude of ownership which dies with us with our own personal death, or our children can fight about the inheritance until the end of time, and whichever one is the powerful one overtakes the resources, as we call them, in our uh, grabbing, taking, colonial minded human mentality. And colonialism doesn't belong to any one race of people. Colonialism is a mindset of taking. Let me put that. Colonialism is a mindset of taking, basically, that can belong to anybody, any people. And so that's that. By the way, when I started this video, I didn't realize I'll be tapping into such difficult issues. At one time, when I started thinking about this mathematical problem, it was just a mathematical problem to me. Or we can go back to the pizza example. Pizza. If there's one pizza to be divided equally and fairly, if that is a condition, and if you have six slices and one person, six slices go to one person. If you have two people, just like in childish math problems, six slices divided in two people, everybody gets three slices. Slices divided amongst three people, everybody gets two slices each. So this is basically the island. Uh, this is basically the 3D land-based version of the same issue, but this is not just about ownership or taking or even guardianship. This is also about space and territory. So this takes us into space. This takes us into um, kinesthetics. This takes us into movement. This takes us into coordinates. This takes us into GPS and territory and other senses that human beings have. Actually, human beings have a sense of navigation and orientation, etc. And we need to tap into these senses in order to bring about the best of our lives. So it didn't occur to me that I will spontaneously be talking about it, but now that I've touched upon this nerve, I will deal into this, that there are two ways of dealing with the island problem, so to speak. You can be a conflicting human being, and you can be a cooperative human being. And you can be a person who walks about the earth with a view, like a person of faith, that I'm here to be a caretaker. This place doesn't belong to me. I didn't start it. I'm not going to take it away from me. I'm here for a very temporary period. I came from somewhere and I'll go back to that place. As the Muslim Sufi mystic poet Mevlana Rumi, if you don't know him, that's Rumi. He says, I know I came from somewhere beyond, and that's where I'm going to go. And this is what many, many faiths, the Abrahamic or the Western faiths, so to speak, say it very overtly. You came from a certain space, and you're going to go back there. And the that's the Western faith's very clear outtake. The Eastern faiths say the same thing in a more poetic way, in a more right-brained kind of way, in a more intellectual kind of way, that we are here for caretaking. The earth is the mother. We're here to caretake. We don't own it. We leave it. But even in this caretaking, we have to have an attitude of belonging and of at least temporary ownership and responsibility. With the right kind of authority, gives us the right kind of attitude to deal with the problems while we're in the problem. And we deal with paradox while we're here. We deal with integration while we're here. So island problem is one of the problems that, or frameworks that brings like everything together. And anyway, essentially, this is a problem that deals with the in isolation, expansion, inclusion, inheritance, and capacity part of the issue. Like, what is the capacity of the system that we are in? What is the capacity of the planet that we are in? What is the capacity of the family that we are in? What is the capacity of the organization? What is the limit of anything? And what happens beyond that limit? Well, there's continuation beyond that limit. Just I'm going to let you jump to the good news. Um, so yeah, essentially the island problem, very mathematically speaking, is that if in addition to John Ferris, there is now a Sheila on this island, well, ideally the island now belongs three ways. It's one third, unless you want to assign projects differently to women, and then give them a different kind of different weighted matrix of responsibilities and ownership. That's something else. But very mathematically, very purely speaking, the island now belongs one third to people. So this is how you expand. When you're the one and only in some space, you're one. You are the only one, and you handle the entire thing to the best of your ability, ideally, right? And then depending upon how you dealt with that thing, when the second thing comes, which it inevitably will come, your energy of how you were dealing with your situationship will affect how you deal with the other thing. And that thing is going to come. If a man doesn't arrive or a woman doesn't arrive on this island, another human being doesn't arrive on this island, you can get an infestation of flies. You will be dealing with more fish surrounding your island, or the fish disappearing, which might compel you to leave that island. The island problem is a problem that can go many ways, can make you think of many ways. And how do we actually deal with land? And how do we operate around a land? Do we stay there? Do we leave? How do we divide it? How do we include things? How do we expand? How do we just grow with something of limited um, circumference and capacity, so to speak? And if the physical island has a finite capacity, it occurs to me to say that to you right now. When we are testing capacity, we have to tap into a world of inner capacity. The more we live in the world of inner capacity, see, my work is also to deal with, it also deals with feminism and, sorry, ecofeminine, not feminism. Oh, goodness. Ecofeminine, not feminism at all, but inner world. The more you know how to be in your inner worlds, you can keep expanding in that world exponentially and infinitely without banging into each other in the outer world. That is why prayer is important. That is why meditation is important. That is why walking about your inner world is far more important than walking about in the outer world, which actually is finite. So when you step out in the finite and outer world, which you will and which you do, there is a problem of capacity. There's also a problem and an opportunity. The problem word doesn't mean bad thing. I'm speaking of problem in, for those who are not familiar, in the mathematical sense, like a puzzle. The puzzle is of how you include the other. I'm not giving any moral directives now, except minimally hinting upon, touching upon the fact that we can have two kind of attitudes of how to deal with this puzzle. But you can really go into the depth of it. And I just realized that we are in a time period and an era where this thing is like when we are coming head to head on real life islands everywhere. And this problem is no longer a problem that is abstract And for some people, it was never abstract. The more we are becoming people who are connected with lands and cultures, and more we are becoming aware of this world, the more we are realizing, nah, man, this space belongs to some people, or there are people taking care of this thing. The food is coming from somewhere. Somebody is taking care of coconuts on this island. Somebody's taking care of the nuts on this island. Somebody's fishing on this island. What rights belong to them? What duties belong to them? So out of this island framework comes so many things that I'm realizing how to do like a fuller and longer talk about it and just go into the various dimensions of it. But this is a thinking framework, which when you put in front of you, it's going to really make you think and contemplate of things. And you have to think of this issue in terms of the issue itself, the mathematics of it, and independent of who you are as a person or race. I'm speaking of people who deal with the task of thinking and with compassion and with problem solving. What will effectively be true in this real world is that either you'll be the John of this problem, or you'll be the Forrest of this problem, or you'll be the Sheila of this problem. You'll be the first person, or you'll be the second person, or you'll be the third person. And for all of these different characters, different kind of ethics and different kind of approaches apply in order to reach a point of inclusion and integration. And that deals with the manners of how you become cooperative to one another. Um, so one of these will have to have a welcoming attitude, inclusive attitude. The other one will have to have a cooperative attitude and accept the fact that John came here first and has some more knowledge and authority. This is absolutely natural. And also, all the people on this island will have to understand that there is such a thing as an issue of capacity. There really is. And an issue of excellence, an issue of everybody doing their best and everybody living their happy best life, at least a minimal life of welfare, health, and happiness. If people are losing out on that, we have to think about what is affecting the state of this island. Is it the boat people? Or is it what is within this framework? Suppose we have no more boat people, then what happens? Right? And now I'm tapping into the territory of global politics right now, but I think I'll jump into this right now. I didn't plan to, I just wanted to let you know of these frameworks, but I'll jump into it right away and probably clip this part of the video away to make a separate video, but here we are. You have to also think of the problem. Let's put it this way. Let's put it mathematically again, or in terms of philosophy, or in terms of just using this as a thought model, thought framework, and heuristic, right? You have to think of this problem this way. What if the boat people are coming in? Do we have capacity? Okay. What if the boat people are not coming in? What if there are no boat people? What if there's just an island? This is me, them, and you. How do things work out? So I will stop being quiet. Currently, we have an issue where the northern hemisphere, the West, is saying we're running out of capacity. Okay. If we accept this, we cut out the boat people, we send them back, if we don't let them come in, there are no more boat people. What do you then do with the island? So you'll still be dealing with the island problem. You'll be dealing with the problem of inclusion. You'll be dealing with the problem of um, circulation of resources, um, resources and opportunity. You will be dealing with uh, assignment of duties, responsibilities, and you'll have to be dealing with the fact that people have some quality of life, and then you will also be dealing with the issue of what does quality of life mean and what views do people hold. And at the end of the day, you will have to come to one place together. Probably I need a fourth framework, not just the island framework, a framework of where people come together face to face in some kind of council and work things out. By the way, I call that, it's the fourth framework. The bonus framework is 3 plus 1, right? The bonus framework is smoking in a cubicle problem framework. That's a bonus framework. Smoking in a cubicle framework is another heuristic and is another simulation where you have to think about the fact that there are two people in a cubicle confined for a period of time. Neither of them can go out, right? So this is a what is it even called? This is a situation which you have to think about. How is it going to work out? One of them smokes and is kind of compelled to it. The other is a non-smoker and probably gets a bit of allergy. And so the one who smokes is compelled to smoke, and the one who doesn't smoke doesn't want it. But what do we do at the end of the day, right? So they are there for 48 hours. They are in that confined space. And what happens? So I'm picturing there's going to be some form of negotiation. And if they're there for an extended period of time and the smoker is feeling compelled to smoke and the non-smoker is at least feeling the tension of the smoker kind of wanting to smoke, and there's a tension building up which you cannot defer any longer, you would have to negotiate. And my conclusion to the smoking in a cubicle framework or problem, I should actually call them problems, um, is that you will, at the end of the day, have to talk about what is the right morality, what is the right thing to do. So the smoking in a cubicle framework or problem makes you think about right thing. It eventually compels you to decide what is healthy, what works. And you can go deeper into that. What defines health? Why is what is healthy healthy? Or what is hygienic hygienic? And why is what is not healthy or unhygienic unhealthy or unhygienic? What is the baseline? And the baseline is your body, your organic reality, right? Organic reality. Sorry, I don't have space here anymore, and so I'm going to override, but I don't want to let go of my thought. So this is a solution to the smoking in a cubicle issue. You would have to think about this, and if people still don't agree on what is the right thing to do, finally you have the SWORD framework or Olivin's SWORD framework. That is the framework that remains in the background. If people are not understanding, if they're not coming to a solution, if they don't even want to talk, then you have Olivin the SWORD. Olivin's, I have peace in one hand, I'll give you good things if you cooperate, and SWORD is, I'm going to attack you if you don't. And both parties have it. That's the fun thing. Or at least the one party that is yourself, which chooses it, which says, I choose to use this framework and I'm going to start implementing it in order to shape this universe. So it better be you. But if it's not you, it can be the other. If it's neither of you, then all of you are in the state of loss. If it's both of you, then you better cooperate and act like human beings of a good caliber who are going to come to a solution and going to think about what really is the baseline reality. What is the organic reality? What makes sense, right? There's something outside of us. There's something outside of our choices that is there around us, and it makes an inherent and organic sense that this is the way that this problem needs to be solved. But if you get trapped in your own mind, in your own choices, there is no way that you are going to reach a solution, because your mind is absolutely arbitrary and it can choose to do whatever it wants to. John can see Faris or Sheila on this island and still say, all the coconut belong to me. But then John will have to deal with the natural reactions of Faris and Sheila, and then it depends upon the capacity and temperaments of Faris and Sheila. And so all the characters in some part have to think for themselves, like, what is my move to make? What do I need to do now? Do I sit around? Do I cry? Do I attack this person? Do I negotiate? Or do I not fight with this person but assert my authority through just being a better built person who can just say, John, you sit back, don't you come in my path, don't you mess around with me, I'm going to go for the coconut. So shut the hell up, John, and I'm going to go for the coconut, right? So there are different ways that you can assume and assert authority. You don't have to go for the sword immediately, right? So if Faris builds their capacity and Sheila builds her capacity, Sheila is intelligent, Faris is, good muscle, they can overtake John, who's being a Scrooge and saying, I'm not going to let you work with the coconuts. And energy is relative. So if you are more powerful and if you have more strength, more likely you are going to overcome the person who has a pettiness about them. And that is the nature of pettiness. It makes you small. It shrinks your brain. It makes you petty and you lose capacity. But if things go into plan B or C on some situationship, then you develop alternative capacities and more capacities, and deeper you go. Better that human beings stop all this thing at a nice place where things don't have to escalate further or don't have to degenerate further. They only grow, they only become better, and we can do these things. Then comes the issue of fate. People of faith believe God is provider, God gives, God gives, but amongst the many gifts of God is not just coconuts and island spaces and fish and net, it's also your capacity to think and empathize. So at the end of the day or night or whatever it is, or the cycle, You are the one who has to work with your capacity and your decision making. You are the one who has to work with your capacity and your decision making and say, well, I can choose this situation. There's nothing coming from the outside. There's nobody that is going to tell me or dawn upon me. I have to choose. And I have these things inside me. I have my intuition inside me. I have nature inside me. I have my impulses inside me. And I better be a healthy and happy and just a healthy human being to have the right kind of thing, thoughts and impulses. If you don't, well, guess what? Nature is going to take over. Nature can send a blight to the entire island, kill all humans, and go back to a giant reset. And that can also happen. And if you people don't sort out your problems amongst yourselves, there are always external forces that are going to solve your problem for you. So nature and people, humans, the world is always at work. And these are just some of the fascinating frameworks that you can use in order to understand the world, in order to develop your capacity. Just keep on thinking of them, look at the world around you. When you're idling, you can think of this problem and think of how things work out and decide when capacity has been hit and how to do a reset and do a reorganization, restructuring, replanning, design things a new way in which everybody's basic fundamental human rights and needs are going to be met. Do you really need big houses, or can you do with houses where you are living comfortably, eating comfortably? You don't have to be in giant halls or something. And then you go and meet your neighbor instead of just ruminating alone by yourself. And for that, you will need to change your inner psyche and capacity, the inner words, which is in some ways far more um, available to you as opposed to outer external resources which are finite. And they're, if I speak as a person of faith, they're made deliberately finite so that you will be compelled to solve your problem and turn to your inner capacity and the good assets that have been placed within you. John, Faris, Sheila, Jacob, Ahmed, um, Rajiv, and she, and uh, all the people of the world. So good luck to you. And this is Hubb'Allah signing off. Stay with me. You subscribe to my channel. You share my video. You tell people there is a person in Himalayas who's speaking of these things and can really help us understand the problems that are taking place in the world, in your personal life and on the global scale. Thank you very much. And subscribe to all my channels. Thank you.